Hello, my name is Wendy McDonnell from CompassionateSolutions.ca with my guest, Nathan M. McTague. He is a certified positive discipline parent, educator, and life coach with solutions for natural parenting and Feeleez. And today we have an exciting topic. We're going to talk about empathy and what it is and what does it look like and why is it a parent's superpower. So welcome, Nathan. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit about you, your family, and what you like to study?
Sure. I have 3 daughters, ages 13, 11, and 7 currently. And they're my greatest joy and my first value. I definitely consider myself a full-time parent first. Out of the focus in parenting, I really became more and more interested in how to do it. I was raised, very much like most kids my age, in my generation, with not a whole lot of parental involvement, and I didn't get to see a whole lot of other kids being raised. We're in school all day and all that sort of thing. So I didn't really know a whole lot about parenting when I came to it. And so I got really serious about doing research for myself. And in the course of that, continued to learn more and more about the brain science involved and the psychology involved and developmental psychology as well. And just found myself more and more immersed in that as an area of study as well as just something to fortify my own family's growth. And my partner and I created a business called Feeleez, which is it's a company that's designing and building toys and tools for teaching kids about emotions. And in the process of learning about how those tools work and how to talk to parents about how those tools work, I just found myself learning more and more and more about empathy in particular, and what a profound and central device it is to our whole social network of humanity. All the things that we do as a team, or as a group, or as a tribe, or as a nation, centers around that central piece of empathy.
So how would you define empathy? What is it?
Well, there's a couple parts. I think there's the automatic empathy that we have neurologically, just based on the mirror neurons that we have. So when we see someone doing something, our brain runs a little simulation of that same activity, so that we have a sense of what it feels like, even before or without doing anything like that. That's also how we process emotions that we see others having. When we see someone smile, our brain runs a physical simulation of smiling in order to interpret what that emotion that we're seeing feels like, and then we get a sense of sort of a shared sense, actually, of what's going on for the other person. Now that's the sort of automatic neural empathy that we all have and is on board, but I think there's another piece that, as we work with children in particular, or if we didn't get it when we were kids, then as we get older and start working on ourselves, so to speak, we can facilitate the emergence of a greater capacity for empathy and sort of learn more and more about how to use it. And so once we're employing empathy, there's 2 pieces to that. One is just identifying with someone else's feelings, just understanding what the person across from us is going through. And then there's an active piece, particularly useful in parenting, where we actually express that empathy toward the child and let them know that we're feeling a sense of what's going on for them, and talk to them about that and share in that feeling with them.
And why is it a parent's superpower to be able to do this with our children? What does it do for us?
Well, it's a really neat mechanism, and probably it works this way because with how we're supposed to interact socially. But it answers several important parts of child rearing. For one, it helps in moments of intense emotion when we enter into the situation with our children and offer our empathy for how they're feeling, then that automatically begins to help them process their emotions in an easier way. At first, what often happens is it gives them license to really feel the feeling and really let it out and really make it present for them to process. And then through the course of staying with them in empathy and helping them become more conscious of the feelings and talk about it and get it out and learn from it, then empathy also acts as a way to soothe and help the child's brain return to a level of higher functioning that it loses. As children have overwhelming emotion, they lose all access to their upper brain and higher brain functioning. So it's a way to help them through the process to get back online, so to speak. But then also over the course of a child's maturation, teaching empathy and empathizing with a child so they know the experience of being empathized with, and then helping them develop and facilitate the emergence of their empathy, we find that kids who know about empathy and learn about empathy and become more emotionally intelligent, they make the kinds of choices that we really want children and citizens and adults as they mature to make. So we wind up having to use fewer rules to regulate their behavior because they are looking with empathy and learning how to work in a social system based on their knowledge of other people's feelings rather than just trying to remember all the rules.
So what I'm hearing then is that empathy helps a child to self-regulate so that you need less of the external rules and regulations to regulate behavior.
Yes, absolutely. And it does that in a double fashion. It does that in the moment to help them regulate the emotion that they're having, first through the process of allowing it, but then triggering that change in brain chemistry so that they get back to higher brain functioning. And that's actually the process of emotional regulation. So you're helping them do it in the moment, but then you're also helping them to learn a skill for doing it on their own in the future.
And what I'm also hearing under there too, as a parent, this is really important because then your children then are closer to you. They're going to follow you and like more connected. Is that the idea too?
Sure, and that's actually a piece that I should have mentioned as part of its superpower, because one of the neat things about it is that while we're using it, it affords us opportunities to help our children both in the moment and then as they develop and through the process of growing their empathy. But then also what's really, really wonderful about it is it's such a powerfully efficient way to connect with our children. So that even through the process and then afterward, what we've established or what we've gained from that interaction is a closer connection with our children, both right then and then moving forward as well.
Right. And I'm guessing, like, I know I've enjoyed that with my kids, and you've enjoyed that with yours. But I think practically speaking, too, it gives us the power to parent, to be able to guide them and to be able to love them and to be able to show them what it's like to be a grown-up adult in this world and make wise choices.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I think, too, that the process of meeting a child in their upset and their overwhelm and helping them with an empathetic approach and just being with them and connecting with them creates a stronger, greater bond between the two of you, but it also engenders the relationship with more trust, which is really a key piece for as we age with our children and they become more and more independent. We really want to facilitate that trust between us so that they continue to feel empowered to come to us when they have issues that they need help with, or if they're in trouble, or any of the above, when trust really matters.
Good point. And certainly as we age, then we still have that connection as you know, we may be in a position where they're helping to care for us, which in the long run, that's kind of where that's what you're parenting for the long run.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Cool. I like where this conversation is going.
Oh yeah, me too. I was just thinking, when you put it that way, then you're really you really want to teach empathy, because eventually you're going to be on the receiving end of some of that. So yeah, it's a really good idea to do it and do it well.
Good point. Now we are going to put up a link to your article, Empathy, Schmimpathy, Why Bother, and some other really excellent tips to kind of sum up what you've just talked about what happens in the brain when we become dysregulated and how to get back into a regulated state. But is there one key that you think that parents ought to know or take away to be able to help them do this more often? Because many of us don't have a lot of models for this kind of behavior.
True. Yeah, I actually, and I don't mean to speak harshly about my parenting or upbringing or any of the people who took such good care of me when I was growing up, but I wound up being an adult who was fairly easily overwhelmed by my own emotions, and especially in a situation where I'd be with my my firstborn, my eldest daughter, and she would be really upset. I would almost immediately always go into overwhelm with her. There's an interesting link up between a parent's and child's brain, such that we are intentionally triggered to have a similar kind of emotional response when we hear our children being upset, so that we act. But for lots of us who didn't get real strong emotional regulation skills from our own upbringing, it can be a real serious trigger, and it can be a dangerous trigger, actually. So one of the things that I really wanted to focus on in my own study was how to help parents learn to take care of themselves in a moment like that, so that they're better able to take care of their children or help their children. And there's a few things that I think are really important, but if I was going to say the number one thing, it would be self-empathy, which I'm not even sure if that's already a term, or my partner and I, Natalie, coined that, because generally we tend to think of ourselves as being pretty well informed about our own feelings and knowing what's going on for us, and so the idea of expressing empathy toward oneself seems a little perfunctory at best. But as it turns out, one of the things that helps us regulate and process our own emotions better and more easily is to simply say to ourselves what we're feeling. And it actually sounds like it's maybe too simple, like, oh sure, that's really going to do something. But I have found over the nearly 14 years of my own experience working with it and reprogramming my own brain to be better able to handle these kinds of situations, that's often the thing that works best for me, is to just, even to myself, or if it comes to it, saying it to my kids, I'm just feeling so frustrated right now. Or, oh, I'm really feeling freaked out too. Or oh, you're upset, I'm feeling upset. Some of that goes a long way to just sort of change the way that our brain is processing what's happening to us. And then it gives us a little bit more room to reach out to our children. And one of the interesting things about that little trick is that what happens when you do that in your brain is that you're actually reaching from your limbic system, which is freaking out, up to your higher brain to find the word for how you're feeling. And just going up there gets you closer to your own center of empathy, which is also in the prefrontal cortex. So it's a little trick to sort of just get you back into the area where you can access your own empathy for yourself, but then also for your children.
So what I'm hearing then, it's a lot like doing for yourself, maybe something that you haven't experienced already, but it's okay. You can start doing it right now as a parent. Start being present with your feelings. And one thing I caught when you were saying that out loud, like if you were saying I'm freaking out, yeah, I'm frustrated too, or whatever, is you're just naming the feeling. There's no story behind that. It's just naming it. It's what it is. This is what's happening. We're going to figure this out, but this is just what's going on right now. Is that the idea?
Absolutely, yes. one of the things I learned from the nonviolent communication people is that we really want to be clear when we're talking about our feelings to own them ourselves. So I'm really careful in my own language, and I suggest it to parents when I talk about this to say your feelings, name your feelings, but don't get into the backstory, don't get into the underlying reasons, and certainly whatever you do, don't blame your kid for those feelings. Just say what they are. It's a real different kind of processing too. If we just are saying the names of our feelings, we're easing our struggle. But if we start getting into the story and the blaming and the pointing fingers, then we're actually amping up our own emotion and turning that content sort of into a less workable emotion for the moment. That's the kind of thing that we have to then go away and process on our own even more.
Right, which is something else that we might want to consider, because I so appreciate the very simple tip that you've given me, but it can be a little bit more complex for some people. If they have some stuff that's coming up where they can't do that, then getting some support is what I'm hearing as well is important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, of the other things that I would list to a parent who wants help in doing it for themselves, there's self-empathy first, and I think that's the most useful in the moment. But then there's lots of other global kinds of things, like recognizing that you're triggered for a reason from your own upbringing, and so it will take some time for you to reprogram those kinds of reactions, and to be patient with yourself and trusting in the process. Another one is you really got to be taking good care of yourself. You got to be eating well, you got to be sleeping well, so that your brain is optimally functioning in the first place. Otherwise, you don't have the capacity to reach for something like that. And then a fourth piece that's really, really important is actually reaching out and getting some support. You can do this with your partner to team up to help each other continue on this path. You can do it with other parents that you know who are like-minded. You can find parenting groups on Facebook. You can find a professional to work with. Whatever you can do to sort of work with someone who knows that this is the path that you're interested in and who can help keep you moving in the direction that you want to be going.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan, for offering your wisdom about empathy and some really practical tips for parents. I so appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. Have a great day.
You too. Be well.